Well, here in the UK alone, more than 1,200 Ghanaians joined the nursing register last year. Well, Adam Bahoski is a political reporter from openDemocracy who recently published his own detailed report on recruiting significant numbers of nurses from countries with desperate shortages.
Since 2017, a quarter of all new nurses in the UK were trained in poorer countries with more severe staffing shortages. So that means that 50,000 nurses who registered to practice in the UK since 2017 were trained in countries that have too few of their own nurses to provide the level of healthcare that's recommended by the United Nations. So as your report shows, that includes Ghanaian nurses, but also Nigerian and Nepalese nurses, despite the World Health Organization discouraging other countries from recruiting from those countries.
So what is the impact of this on the countries where these nurses are coming from?
Well, I think your report showed that very well. It's putting a lot of pressure on healthcare systems that are already very, very fragile. We spoke to the World Health Organization in Africa, and they told us that workforce migration has contributed to the continent's shortage of 5.3 million health workers. And that includes countries like Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Nigeria, which don't have enough nurses to adequately serve their populations. And it's essentially increasing the vulnerability of healthcare systems that already are spread too thinly.
So what's the answer then, Adam? Because obviously these nurses, they are attracted by the higher wages in higher wage countries, and they're coming for that reason. Is there an argument to say that there should be an encouragement to pay them more in the countries from where they come from?
Well, sure, but I think it's in the UK's hands as a rich, wealthy country to really fix this imbalance. The UK is heavily reliant on foreign trained nurses. The OECD data suggested that UK trains only 1/3 as many nurses per capita as Australia does, and only half the graduation rate of the US. So that's happened as a result of partly of cuts to funding for training in the UK. George Osborne in 2016 scrapped an £800 million worth of bursaries that covered tuition fees and part of the living costs of students training to be nurses. And that led to a drop in a number of students in the UK training to become nurses that only recovered partially when Boris Johnson reversed those cuts in 2019. On the UK side, what many nurses that I've spoken to have told me is that the pay is a huge issue, even now, and that is leading to nurses leaving the NHS. I've spoken to nurses who've told me that they've had to take on credit card debts and that they are struggling to pay the bills after a decade of essentially real-term cuts to their pay.